last video for this unit, and it is a review of the unit. So we're going to kind of talk about a little bit of everything and possibly help you remember some of those things so you're ready for the test. Okay, here we go. Okay, so there was three main portions of this unit. There was defining number of outcomes, the actual finding of probabilities, and our statistical analysis that you should have just finished up. Going all the way back to the number of outcomes, we had the basic counting principle. If there's n way to do one thing and n ways to do another, all I got to do is take m times n, and I find out how many total possible outcomes are possible. Permutations were if I was taking a group of things and trying to do something with it, and they were in a specific order. So if I wanted to take and find the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer of your class, then we would have to do that in order, and that would be a permutation. And then we had combinations. That's again where we just have an array. We have a group of things that we're going to put it kind of group together, and the order doesn't matter this time. So if I just wanted to get a 5-person committee out of your room, that would be a combination. So then we started talking about probability. Probability was just simply a probability in odds, I guess is what it should be. Probability is just what is the number of successful outcomes over the total number of outcomes. And we had the probability of failed events, which is the number of failures over the total number of outcomes. And then we had odds, which were the number of successes to the number of failures. We had the probability of independent events. That's where we multiply our two probabilities, the probability of A happening and the probability of B happening. And we did the probability of dependent events. That's where whatever the result of A is influences the result of B. So then it was the probability of A, and what's the probability of B after A is taken out. We also talked about the probability of mutually exclusive events, and that's where we add. So that's where we take the probability of A and we add the probability of B, as long as A and B had absolutely no overlap. And then we ended up with the probability of inclusive events. That's when there is an overlap, such as, say, in red or face cards. There are red face cards, so you have that overlap. And that's where you do the probability of A and the probability of B. You add those, and then you subtract off the probability of the combination of A and B. Okay, so those are the probability things. We had the statistical analysis, or central tendencies, or mode, mean, median. Those are our central tendencies. Hopefully you remember how to do all those. Mean, you just add everything up, divide by how many. Mode, what's the most common. Median, what's the middle. We also kind of looked a little bit at that to say, okay, which one of these three would we kind of use to represent the data? We had the measures of variation, which were the range, the quartiles, the outliers, the standard deviation, the variance, and the mean deviation. All those went into that measure of variance, how far out were the numbers actually spread. We talked about distribution. Is it positively skewed or negatively skewed? Is it a normal distribution? And if it's a normal distribution, can you figure out what percent or how many of an item are within one standard deviation or however far on a graph? And then we also talked about the margin of error in that last lesson that you just got done with, and that's figuring out, well, what is that margin of error if I had such and such population? Okay, so those are the areas that you want to look at. I would recommend looking back over your quizzes and your assignments as a way to start that. But here I want to talk a little bit about this particular test. As a scoring note on this test, correctly answering the problem with the work shown will be considered average. So just give me the work and correctly answer it will get you an average score. An average score is like a 7, or sorry, about an 8. So there's your work with correct answer with work shown will receive an 8. Okay, so there are 6 problems on this test. Each problem is worth 10. Now if you just give me the answer, because you got the right answer, you're going to get a passing score on the question. A correct answer with work shown will receive an 8, and a correct answer with work shown and the explanation can be the full 10. Okay? On this particular test, there are 6 questions to this test, so there's actually 60 points possible out of the 50 points. The test is only worth 50, so you know that. Okay, so here you go. If you want to get that 10, you not only have to show me the work, but you've got to be able to tell me how did you get to the right answer, what was your process, why did you do it that way, kind of explain the whole thing to me so I can say, yes, you definitely understand. Okay, so there is what I have for you for review. If you have other questions, oh, let me tell you this. Each of those three areas, each of these three areas has 2 questions on the test. So there are 2 questions from the finding the number of outcomes. There are 2 questions from the probability unit. There are 2 questions from the statistical analysis portion, so that you know that. Okay, so there you go. Now you're ready to get going on it.